She screamed at me, her voice sharp with fury. "You'll regret walking away from me. I always get what I want." I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Not this time." When she came pounding on my door weeks later, demanding what she said was hers, the legal notice taped right there in black and white told her the opposite. And when she wouldn't leave, I had to make the call I never thought I'd make, dialing the police on Bianca, my ex. I'm 29, she's 31. I own a small photography studio. Or rather, I fought hard to make sure I kept it, because Bianca nearly took it from me after our breakup 3 months ago. Let me rewind. Bianca and I were together for 2 years. She worked in public relations, always polished, always connected, always talking about her influence. I was a photographer trying to make rent, bouncing between weddings, birthday shoots, and the occasional family portrait. She had contacts in the fashion world, and about a year into dating, she began tossing me gigs from her network, editorial shoots, campaigns, higher profile work. At the time, I thought I'd struck gold. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she was helping elevate my career. I was thankful. Maybe too thankful. I didn't notice that every favor she did came with invisible strings that slowly started to tighten. 6 months ago, I finally had enough saved to lease a modest studio space. Nothing glamorous, just 800 square feet in an old building, but it had tall windows, beautiful natural light, and most importantly, it was mine. My name on the lease, my money paying the rent. Bianca, of course, helped me market it to some of her clients. And in the beginning, I appreciated that. But soon she was talking about our creative space, like she had equal ownership. She held her PR meetings in the studio without asking. She had packages delivered there. She even started using the place as her personal office. At first, I tried to set boundaries. I asked her politely to at least check with me before scheduling meetings during my shoots. She laughed in my face. "Babe, without me, you'd still be shooting toddlers in public parks. This studio exists because of my connections." The arrogance kept escalating. She canceled my bookings if they interfered with her plans. She once told a client I was unavailable when I was standing right there, just so she could host a PR meeting in my space. She'd smile at her friends and call it her studio. 3 months ago was the breaking point. I had a $3,000 commercial shoot lined up. Bianca decided it wasn't important, told the client I was sick, and hijacked the studio to throw a PR launch party. That was it for me. I confronted her, and she blew up. "It's one job. I'll get you 10 more. Stop acting ungrateful." I told her the truth. This was my business, my studio, my lease, my work. She snapped back that she created me. That without her, I was nothing. That night, I ended both the relationship and any professional connection. I demanded her apartment key back. She hurled it at me, eyes blazing, and swore she'd take everything I thought was mine. I figured it was just bitter ex talk. I was wrong. The first 2 weeks after the breakup, I heard nothing from her. I changed my apartment locks immediately, but not the studio locks. The building had a security system, and changing commercial locks isn't cheap. That silence was just the calm before the storm. Her revenge started subtle. She called every client she had ever introduced me to, spreading lies that I'd stolen her creative concepts, that I was unstable, unprofessional. I lost 3 jobs almost instantly. That stung, but I still had plenty of my own clients who knew my work and trusted me. Then packages began showing up at the studio addressed to Bianca Torres Creative Consulting. I returned them. She texted me furious messages. "Those are crucial client materials. You have no right." I told her flat out. "This is not your address. Use your own office." Her reply? "That is my office. I established that studio as my base." She started walking into my shoots like she owned the place, waltzing past clients, introducing herself like she belonged there. That's when I realized she had memorized my security code. I changed it immediately and told her in writing she was not welcome. Her response? A laughable letter from a cut-rate lawyer claiming she had established tenancy through her regular use and storage of property in the studio. Tenancy. In a studio she never paid a cent for. Ridiculous. But she didn't stop. Bianca began telling people she was the co-founder of my business. She printed business cards with my studio's address. She updated her LinkedIn claiming she was running the space and that I was subleasing from her. She even booked meetings there without telling me, dragging my studio's name into her business. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just an ex acting out. She was actively trying to steal the life I'd built. I hired a lawyer, Diane, who specializes in business disputes. She reviewed everything: my lease, the payment records, emails, texts. Her verdict was clear. Bianca had no legal ground. Not 1 inch. And yet, she still tried to force her way in, banging on the studio door and shouting like she owned the place. That's when I taped the court order to the door and called the cops. This isn't over. But one thing is clear. The studio is mine. Always was. Always will be. Diane warned me. She's building a paper trail that could come back to bite us. We have to put an end to this immediately. So with her guidance, we drafted and sent a cease and desist letter. The wording was direct and unambiguous. Stop claiming ownership. Stop using the address. Stop meddling with the business. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Bianca went public. She uploaded a dramatic Instagram post. When you pour yourself into creating something beautiful, and then someone tries to erase your contributions, I will stand up for what's mine. This is the reality of women entrepreneurs, and the struggles we face. The comments section exploded with sympathy. Dozens of people chimed in. Stay strong, Bianca. So unfair. Men always push women out when they succeed. From the outside, it looked like I was the villain. I didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't comment. I just took screenshots and filed them away. 2 days later, she escalated. I was in the middle of editing a client's photos when I heard noise out front. Looking out the window, I saw a moving truck parked outside. 2 guys with dollies stood waiting, and Bianca was out there barking orders like a commander on a battlefield. I hurried downstairs and met them at the door. What's going on? I asked. Bianca gave me a sugary smile. I'm moving my things out. Since you're being territorial about this space, I'll just take what's mine. You don't have anything here, I said flatly. Oh really? She breezed past me, the movers following behind. She pointed at equipment and furniture like she was conducting an auction. That lighting kit, bought with money I helped bring in. Those backdrops, purchased while we were together. That desk, I picked it out. All mine. I shook my head. No. I bought those. I have the receipts. She smirked. Receipts don't tell the whole story. Then turning to the movers, she ordered, start with the desk. I stepped directly in their path. No one touches anything. Bianca, leave. Or what? She sneered. You'll call the cops on your girlfriend? Ex-girlfriend. And yes. She laughed in my face. Please. I know my rights. I have belongings here. You can't deny me access to my own property. Then name one thing in here that actually belongs to you. I challenged. She walked over to a shelf in the corner, picked up a small potted plant she'd brought months earlier, and clearly forgotten about. Holding it up triumphantly, she declared, This proves I have property here, which means I have the right to be here. The movers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them muttered, Ma'am, maybe we should wait outside until this is sorted. Bianca snapped, No. I'm paying you to move my things. Start loading. That was the breaking point. I pulled out my phone and called the police, explaining that someone was attempting to remove property from my leased studio without authorization. As soon as Bianca realized I was serious, she turned on the waterworks. By the time the officers arrived, she was crying and telling them she was just trying to collect her belongings from a shared workspace. She even waved around business cards with my studio address on them, as though that proved something. The officers checked my lease, my ID, and then turned to her. Do you have any proof of ownership, documentation, or residency? They asked. Her only evidence was the business cards. One officer finally said, Ma'am, this appears to be his commercial space. Without legal documents or proof, you can't remove property. If you believe you have a legal claim, you'll need to pursue it through the courts. Bianca's tears dried instantly. She glared at me and hissed, This isn't over. I always get what I want. Then she stormed out, leaving behind the one pathetic trophy she'd clutched, her wilting plant. For a moment, I thought maybe that reality check would cool her down. I was wrong. She just shifted tactics. Next came a small claims lawsuit. Not for the studio itself. She wasn't quite that detached from reality, but for lost income and unreimbursed business expenses. She alleged we were equal partners in the business, claiming I owed her half the studio's value plus compensation for clients she supposedly brought in. Her demand, $45,000. When Diane read the filing, she actually laughed. This is ridiculous. She's fishing. It won't hold up. But we'll still need to respond. So we filed a counterclaim, harassment and interference with business operations. I had ample documentation, screenshots of canceled bookings, emails from confused clients, records of her false claims and interruptions. That's when the sabotage began. One morning, I arrived to find every lock in the studio jammed with super glue. None of my keys worked. I had to call a locksmith, lost half a day's work, ate a $400 repair bill plus a $500 cancellation fee from an important client. The building's security cameras told the story. Bianca, hood up, skulking around at 3 a.m., stuffing glue into every keyhole. Clear as day. 2 days later, she escalated further. Every photography studio in the area received an anonymous email warning them about me. That I was unstable, that I stole equipment, that I was unethical. Most ignored it, but 2 colleagues I occasionally collaborated with called me, confused, wanting to know if I was okay. And then came her biggest mistake yet. She filed a complaint with building management, claiming she was a tenant being illegally evicted. She even forged a sublease agreement between us and fabricated payment records showing she'd supposedly been paying me $800 a month for shared space. Management called me baffled. She says she's your subtenant and you're kicking her out without cause. That's a lie, I told them immediately. I've never received a single cent from her. They looked skeptical at first, until I showed them our text history where she explicitly said she'd never paid for the studio. At that point, their demeanor shifted. Forged contracts. Fake records. Fraud. When I relayed all this to Diane, her eyes lit up. Now she's crossed a serious line. Forgery. Fraud. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is criminal. And she was right. Everything shifted. Up until now, I had been playing defense, but that changed the moment we filed for a restraining order. We presented everything. Evidence of harassment, property damage, forged documents, even security footage. The judge didn't hesitate and granted a temporary order right away, pending a full hearing. Bianca was officially served at her office, and one of her co-workers witnessed the whole scene. That night, she called me from a blocked number, her voice filled with rage, screaming that I had humiliated her and destroyed her reputation. My only response was, "You did that yourself," before I hung up. The order was crystal clear. She had to stay at least 100 feet away from me and 500 feet away from the studio. No contact of any kind, except through our lawyers. She would still get her chance in court, but until then, she was legally barred from interfering with me. Most people would have taken that as the end of the road. Bianca didn't. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. She quickly found herself a new lawyer, because the first one apparently dropped her after the forged documents surfaced. During that waiting period, she got desperate. She couldn't show up at my studio, she couldn't call me directly, so she found other ways to lash out. She launched a website, The Truth About My Business Name, stuffed with false claims. She accused me of stealing equipment, breaking contracts, and running a long history of exploiting women entrepreneurs. It was written to look legitimate, carefully optimized so it popped up on search results whenever anyone looked up my studio. But she slipped up in a major way. She registered the domain in her own name. That was an easy trace and just more evidence added to our file. Her next move was flooding review platforms. Within hours, fake accounts posted 1-star reviews. Racist photographer stole deposits, acted inappropriately during shoots. It was obvious spam, and thankfully most platforms have procedures to challenge fraudulent reviews, especially when backed up by a restraining order. Still, it was exhausting having to fight her on every front. When the hearing day finally came, I put on the only suit I owned. Bianca arrived in full corporate battle gear, projecting the image of a wronged, powerful businesswoman. Her lawyer's argument was that the restraining order was nothing more than an attempt to silence what was really just a business dispute. He claimed Bianca had contributed sweat equity to the studio and was being unfairly punished for asserting her rights. That's when Diane went to work. One by one, she dismantled their case. She presented bank records showing every dollar for the studio came from me alone. The lease had only my name on it. There were text messages where Bianca herself acknowledged the studio was mine. We showed the footage of her vandalizing property, the so-called sublease agreements she forged, the website registration in her name, and screenshots of the fake reviews. The judge turned directly to Bianca and asked, "Did you create these sublease documents?" She tried to dance around the question, calling them draft agreements we had supposedly discussed. The judge cut her off. "That's not what I asked. Did you create these documents and submit them as authentic?" After a long pause, she claimed she was documenting our verbal agreement. The judge pressed further. "So you forged them?" Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge wasn't interested in games. The decision was immediate. The restraining order was extended for a full year. Bianca was ordered to remove the website, stop spreading defamatory lies, and cover my legal fees, roughly $8,000. Walking out of the courthouse should have felt like closure, but Bianca couldn't resist. From the parking lot, carefully staying just outside the 100-foot boundary, she shouted, "This isn't over. I'll get what's mine. I always win." Diane just smirked and made sure the court reporter caught every word. 2 weeks later, I learned Bianca wasn't finished. My landlord, the actual property owner, not the building management, called me directly. "I'm calling about the sublease situation," he said. My heart sank. "What sublease situation?" He explained that a woman named Miss Tawes had contacted him, claiming to be my subtenant. She told him I'd been illegally subletting and asked if she could take over the lease properly. I froze. "She's not my subtenant. She's my ex, and there's a restraining order against her." He then told me she had even sent him a sublease contract with my signature, one of the forged documents. She was recycling the same scam, just targeting a different victim. I immediately sent him all the court paperwork, the restraining order, and the ruling that specifically called out her forgery. He wasn't happy. "She seemed very professional on the phone," he admitted. "Even offered to pay 6 months rent up front." That part stuck with me. 6 months up front? Where could Bianca have gotten that kind of cash? The answer arrived soon enough. Bianca had been approaching her wealthy clients, telling them she was expanding her creative agency and needed investors to secure an established studio. She raised almost $30,000 from 3 separate people who thought they were buying into her business. It all unraveled when those investors Googled the studio address and ended up calling me directly. "We're looking to schedule a meeting about the investment opportunity," one of them said. I had no idea what they were talking about. That's when the whole scam came into focus. Bianca had shown them pictures of my studio, my work, and presented it all as her own. She promised them equity in a business that never existed. Now, instead of dealing with petty harassment, there were 3 furious investors staring down the reality that Bianca had conned them. And this time, it wasn't just small claims court, it was fraud on a whole new level. 3 months have passed since the breakup, and looking back, I realized just how far this whole thing spiraled. What Bianca did wasn't just petty drama, it was fraud. Real criminal fraud. Diane connected me with a criminal defense attorney who helped me piece together everything. The forged paperwork, her false claims, the repeated violations of the restraining order. Even reaching out to my landlord counted. I turned it all over to the police, gave them full statements, and showed them every shred of evidence. That led to her second arrest, right at her office in front of her colleagues. This time for fraud and violating the order. She posted bail, but by then her carefully constructed world was already cracking. Her PR agency dropped her, investors who once backed her were pressing charges, and the criminal case was officially underway. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I changed the locks, upgraded the security system, and slowly worked to rebuild client relationships she had tried to destroy. I should have known she wouldn't let it end there. Yesterday, I arrived at the studio to find her waiting. Not up close, She'd measured the exact distance, just far enough to stay outside the 500-foot limit of the restraining order. She stood on the public sidewalk holding a sign that read, "This business was built on lies and theft." On paper, she was in the clear. It wasn't trespassing. It wasn't direct contact. Technically, it was protected speech. But in practice, it was harassment dressed up as a loophole. I called Diane. She sighed and told me to document it, but warned that unless Bianca approached me or directly reached out, it sat in a legal gray zone. So I tried to work while she stood there. 3 hours passed. Clients walked in for shoots, side-eyeing the scene, asking uncomfortable questions. Eventually, I'd had enough. I printed out a poster of my own. On it, I taped copies of the restraining order, the fraud charges, the arrest record, and a QR code linking to a simple site I had built. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. The site had court filings, security footage, and even her own text messages. Everything that was already public record, neatly organized. I fixed the sheet to the glass front door, large enough for her to read across the street. The headline said, "The Truth About Bianca Torres. Scan for court documents." From inside, I watched the change happen. At first, she looked smug, holding her little protest sign. Then pedestrians started scanning the QR code. They read. They looked at her. They shook their heads. One woman I recognized, a client of Bianca's from the fashion industry, scanned the code, read the site, and turned to glare at Bianca with open disgust. She walked off, phone in hand, no doubt spreading the word. That was when Bianca's face shifted. Smugness drained into panic. She snatched up her sign, bolted to her car, and drove off. That night, a single text came from an unknown number. "You win." I took a screenshot before blocking it. Not because I wanted the last word, but because I've learned to save everything. What Bianca never understood is that this was never about winning or losing. It was about protecting what I had built. She thought she could bully, intimidate, and manipulate her way into taking something that wasn't hers, because that had always worked for her in the past. Not this time. The studio is thriving again. I'm booked solid for months. Clients who left out of uncertainty have come back, and new ones arrive knowing the truth. My security system is state-of-the-art, with cameras that would make a casino jealous. And that wilted plant she left behind? I nurtured it back to health. It sits in my office window now, a symbol that even something damaged can grow back stronger. Her criminal trial begins next month. I'll testify, and I'm not afraid. I have every receipt. Emails, texts, forged documents, her own words. She once said she always gets what she wants. But the reality is, wants and gets are not the same thing. What she wanted was my studio. What she got was a criminal record and a wrecked career. What I wanted was peace. And what I got is a business that's mine entirely, along with the knowledge that I can stand my ground against anyone who tries to take it. In the end, that feels like more than enough.